Welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live. It is Wednesday, June 19th, 2024. I'm Julie Hartman, and it's great, as always, to be with you. 844-861-5537 is the call-in number, 844-861-5537, or as always, you can use the chat as long as you keep it classy. How about that episode yesterday, friends, with the Friends guy? Jeff Ostroff, for those who don't understand the reference, joined the show yesterday. We had a live chat about wokeism in Hollywood and anti-Semitism in Hollywood and how and why Hollywood got so woke and how and why we can get out of it. So if you didn't see that, please do check it out. You can listen to this episode, this show and any of our episodes on Apple and Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, and you can watch it right here on YouTube. Hello, Sean McConnell in the producer's room. Very nicely didn't call it a dungeon. Good to be with you. Well, we have a very good episode today. We're talking about climate change, which is, of course, a buzzword these days. But it doesn't have to be a buzzword. The climate is changing. It's true. But we also need to make sure that we are not changing so much and revolutionizing our country in the name of this big bad boogeyman that we have largely concocted. That is why I bring on now Steve Goreham to the show. I've been honored to welcome Mr. Goreham to Timeless before, and he's coming back for a second time, hopefully, and many more in the future. Mr. Goreham is an author and a climate expert, and he's the executive director of the Climate Science Coalition of America. He also has written 4 books about energy, climate change, and sustainable development. There are hundreds of thousands of copies of his books in print. I'll give you the names of 2 of which you should read. The first is Green Breakdown, the Coming Renewable Energy Failure. And the second is The Mad, Mad World of Climatism, Mankind and the Climate Change Mania. Hello, Mr. Goreham, and welcome back to Timeless.
Hi, Julie. Great to join Timeless again, join you.
Yes. You know, this past weekend, I was flipping through some channels on the television, and this movie came up, and I'm forgetting the name of it now, but it's about a climate change catastrophe destroying the world. It's quite a famous movie, and New York is flooded, and LA is flooded, and there's cyclones. Sean, anybody in the producer's room, Mr. Goreham, what is the book? It's called Day After Tomorrow. I think it's called The Day After Tomorrow. Is that the name of some movie?
That is, yeah. It talks about how the Atlantic current gets way out of whack, and it causes climate catastrophes all over the world, which was one of the theories, but never really occurred.
Right.
The Gulf Stream, basically.
Well, I know that you care very much about getting to the facts of climate change. What threat does it really pose? And what are the threats that are now being posed by our efforts to mitigate it? That's what I'm more interested in. And so you and I had talked off the air about this heat wave that is coming to New England in the next few days. Can you tell us a bit about that, and then what we need to know about a potential electrical power emergency?
Yeah, just today, the New England Independent System Operator, who's the grid operator in New England, declared an electric power emergency. Said basically we're not going to have enough electricity, and it's because of the high temperatures there. I think it's getting up to about 95 or 97 today in Maine and in Massachusetts.
Wow.
But the listeners should know, viewers should know, this is weather. We get heat waves periodically. It's not climate change. And it's quite a bit below the records for those states. Sort of interesting. The Massachusetts record high is 107 Fahrenheit, which was set 1975. So that's about 49 years ago. In Maine, the record was set in 1911, 105 Fahrenheit. And the record in Vermont was set in 1912, 107 Fahrenheit. So we've had these sort of temperatures in the past, and there will be a lot of articles talking about how your neighbor's sport utility vehicle is probably causing these temperatures in New England. But I think this is just this is a weather situation.
So, what is more significant of a threat to you? The weather becoming really high, or potential, how do we say it? Green energy initiatives, which may be impacting the electric grid?
Yeah, definitely green energy initiatives.
And what are those?
And
And
we are,
what's going on in that category? And you've written, I saw that you wrote an article recently for the Washington Examiner. You've been writing a lot about the interplay, if you will, of the efforts to mitigate climate change and the catastrophes that are sort of resulting as a result of that. Can you say more?
well, the world, the United States, the wealthy nations of the world are on a quest for a thing called net zero by 2050. That's the United States, Europe, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and some others. And to get to net zero, they want us to stop using coal, oil, natural gas. They want us to switch to wind, solar, and biofuels. And they want to stop all carbon dioxide emissions, or as many as they can. And whatever they don't stop, they want to do. They want to capture carbon dioxide and store it away. But net zero is beyond a reach out goal. It is an impossibility, and it's not going to happen. It is going to break down. And the latest thing is this looming electric power shortage, which has just come upon the U.S. And I don't think the current administration really understands this, but the grid operators do. We're going to have a much higher electricity demand over the next decade than whatever our systems can supply. And it's going to have some tough effects.
Please regale us with those tough facts.
Yeah, so let me give you a little background. So last year, our electrical power in the U.S., 43% came from natural gas, 16% came from coal. So that's about 59% of total U.S. power. Nuclear was about 19. Solar and wind were about 4%. Solar and wind were about 14%. But the green energy group wants to shut down all the natural gas and coal, 59% of our electricity. The second thing we should know is that we've had a history of about 2 decades of flat electrical power demand. About 4.1 million gigawatt hours, hasn't changed much in 2 decades. And during that period of time, we have been shutting down. We've shut down more than 200 coal plants. We've added a lot more natural gas, and we've added wind and solar. But all of a sudden, we have a tremendous increase in demand that is facing most of the grid operators in our nation. And they've been kind of surprised by this. Let me read you a quote here from Jason Shaw, chairman of the Georgia Public Service Commission. He said, when you look at the numbers, it is staggering. It makes you scratch your head and wonder how we ended up with this situation. How are the projections that far off? He means the projections for electrical power demand. This has created a challenge like we've never seen before.
Oh, great. Oh, God.
So there are 3 big things driving this demand imbalance. The four things driving it. The first 3 are green initiatives. One, of course, is the effort to switch to electric vehicles. We now have 17 states with zero emissions vehicle mandates by the typical year is 2035. They want to stop sales of all gasoline and diesel cars and have everybody buy EVs. The second big demand driver is a switch to electric appliances. And we now have 6 states that have cities and counties that have banned natural gas in new construction. The state of New York is the biggest one. There's now a statewide ban as of year 2026. You can't build a building anymore, a 1 to 6 story building with a gas furnace or water heater or stove. And this can be pretty big. In New England, they've estimated that a switch to electric appliances away from natural gas will actually be more electricity demand than a switch to electric vehicles. The third big driver for demand is a push for a new green hydrogen fuel industry. And the Biden administration is offering very big subsidies to switch to green hydrogen fuel. And then the fourth one, which is the biggest of all, is this new demand for artificial intelligence. And this is going to be a big, big deal. So I don't know if you want to get a word in edgewise before I march into artificial intelligence, but it is the big new thing that's about to hit the electrical grids.
Well, before you talk about artificial intelligence, I want to talk to the audience about gold. Economists warn that massive hikes in our taxes could devastate your IRA or your 401k account as the stock market braces for impact. With inflation and the rise of global uncertainty, as we know from this conversation, looming, it's clear that central banks and savvy Americans are turning to gold. If you haven't had your eye on gold, you may want to consider Priority Gold. They can help you diversify your savings with physical gold and silver. You can call 1-800-405-GOLD or visit prioritygold.com/golden for a free gold info guide. Plus, you can see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Experts agree that physical gold is one of the best ways to fortify your savings no matter the economic climate. Act now to get your portfolio working for you while the market is golden. Call 1-800-405-GOLD to speak with a gold specialist, or again, visit prioritygold.com/golden to learn more. That's 1-800-405-GOLD. So yes, regale us with what we ought to know about artificial intelligence.
Right. So this has really just been sprung on the world in the last year and a half with the invention of GPT. NVIDIA, who provides the high-speed processing cards, just this week became the largest company in the world in terms of stock market value. And so what we have is, today we have about 2,500 data centers in the United States. These are big warehouses that hold servers and processors. And they've been doing things like cloud storage and running our internet. But all of a sudden now, they're now upgrading all of these data centers to do artificial intelligence. And the guys that are doing this are the big tech companies. They're Amazon and they're Microsoft, Alphabet, Google, Oracle, Meta. And so they're taking these data centers. Now today, the 2,500 data centers consume 4% of US electricity, roughly. But when you put in these new high-speed processing cards, and they put in thousands and thousands of these, and they do this generative artificial intelligence processing to solve problems, to make machines think like people. And they run these routines for weeks on end, 24 hours a day, and even months at a time. And when you upgrade a data center to do artificial intelligence, you use 6 to 10 times more electricity than you did in the past. And so it's estimated that 4% of electricity data centers use will go up to 20% of the US electrical power within the next 10 years. Just a fantastic amount. They've gone in, Virginia is the biggest data center in the state in the country. There are 467 data centers in Virginia. And they've gone to the grid operator and said, we need 2 gigawatts of additional power. That's like 2 big nuclear plants. That's just not an easy thing to put in. Texas had a forecast that we're going to need 85 gigawatts in the next 10 years. They've now upgraded that to 150 gigawatts of generation power. Amazon just bought a data center building in Pennsylvania right next to a nuclear power plant so they could get enough power. So these things are just, the amount of demand is going to go very, very high with artificial intelligence, and it's going to have some big impact on our energy systems.
We have a question in the chat, which is very much in line with what I was planning to ask you next, Mr. Goreham. The chat says, from where do we receive these processing chips? The CCP?
No, most of them are produced by Taiwan Semiconductor Corporation, which is located in Taiwan. That's where NVIDIA, that's the primary supplier to NVIDIA, but the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation is now building plants in Arizona, in Japan, and in Europe to try and expand their output. But right now there isn't enough semiconductor capacity, there aren't enough processing chips for the demand, and that's why the price of NVIDIA stock has gotten so high. So, but here's the situation. So we have the green movement that wants to shut down 59% of our electrical power, the natural gas and the coal, but at the same time, we're trying to shift to electric vehicles, shift to electric appliances, build a green hydrogen fuel industry, and then the biggest of all, upgrade many of these data centers to artificial intelligence. This isn't going to happen. And so the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to stop shutting down coal and natural gas plants, and we're going to stop shutting down nuclear plants in some places. And we've already seen some of those. For example, the Diablo Canyon plant in California, the nuclear plant, is being extended for another 5 years. They're restarting a nuclear plant in Michigan that was shut down summer of 2022, the Palisades. And Utah has just announced they're going to extend the life of a number of their coal plants. We're going to see more and more of this. And of course, this is going to upset the green movement because they want us to get rid of all the natural gas and coal. So they're going to be moaning and wailing about this. The second thing that's going to hit everybody is that the big guys are going to get their contracts. Meta and Microsoft and Google, they need vast amounts of power, and they're probably going to get their contracts for these data centers. But that means everyone else is going to be a little bit short of electricity, and so electricity bills are going to be rising for regular citizens. And we've seen some of that already. It also means that charging stations are going to have trouble breaking even because electricity is going to be more expensive. Electric heat pumps for homes are going to be more expensive, and that's also going to slow any sort of transition to green energy. Anyway, keep watching that. This is a big thing that you're going to hear more and more about over the next year.
I want to pause for a moment and play a video that took place today. Sean, if you wouldn't mind cutting in, you told me just a few seconds before we went on the air that there was something at Stonehenge today.
Yeah, that's correct. As much as I love the color orange, I don't want to see Stonehenge abused. Hit that, Alejo.
No! No! Hey, you! Hey! They're coming to destroy.
No.
No! Hey! Hey! No! They're destroying. Okay, we need security there. We need security there right now. We got to stop all. They're coming to destroy basically all of the Stop it! Stop it! Stop him! No!
Mr. Goreham, let's say that those individuals' wishes come true. Let's say that we go full throttle towards even more than we already are, towards solar, towards cutting out gas-powered vehicles. What would our world look like? I want us to paint a picture here of what would happen. You talk about, the grid shutting down. What would that on the ground really look like in our day-to-day lives if we kept going forth with this green agenda and our grid collapsed?
Yeah, that would be very sad because we are really dependent on hydrocarbons in this world today. Derivatives from oil run 91% of our vehicles and another 4% from natural gas. Electricity is about 1% today, and biofuels are about 4%, very, very small. We have many nations that are dependent upon coal. Matter of fact, coal-fired power plants produce 35% of the world's electricity. People don't realize that. And we have 700 million people today that don't have access to electricity. Another 2 billion people that have access have blackouts and brownouts every other day. And so if you have an air conditioner in your home in the United States, that one appliance uses more electricity than a third of the world's people get to use on any given day. And then if you look at all of our heavy industries, if you look at steel, if you look at fertilizer, if you look at chemicals, if you look at concrete and cement, that's the vital ingredient for concrete. All of these things use natural gas. In China, they use coal. These are things that are not going to be quickly converted. We just can't do this. Despite, it's very sad that people are going out and defacing monuments and pictures and other things. But it's just not going to occur in the short term. Instead, what it's going to do, this green movement, is it's going to raise electricity prices. It's going to raise, we're going to have electricity blackouts in places like New England is concerned with now. We're going to have a lot of loss of freedoms because governments seem to want to take away gasoline vehicles and take away gas appliances. And I think people are going to push back. They're going to say enough of this. We need reliable, low-cost power. And by the way, none of this is really going to affect global temperatures anyway. Climate is dominated by nature, not man-made emissions.
Many Americans feel helpless in the wake of this green agenda. What can we do? I know it sounds trite, but who can we vote for, or what measures would you recommend that we consider voting for, or what things can we do in our everyday lives to try to stop these efforts that I believe most Americans are against?
Well, and many Americans don't understand, I think, is another issue, because the press is filled with articles about it's the hottest time ever, which is not correct. Storms are getting stronger, which is not correct. Polar bears are dying, which is not correct. We have more polar bears than ever. So the vast majority of headlines are flat out incorrect. People really need to go the next step down and question. They need to educate themselves. My books, for example, in school, kids get a very one-sided view of the world. My book, The Mad, Mad, Mad World of Climatism, which has the polar bears in the car driving along, is a good way for kids to get a different point of view than what they get in the press. But people need to read up, and then they need to challenge their public officials. And they need to say, well, why do we need this solar plant next to us on this farmland? Why do we need these wind turbines towering over us? Why do you want to raise our electricity prices? And push back. And they are going to do that. And we're seeing more and more of that. We see there are many projects that are being opposed now. It's getting tougher to build wind and solar plants across the country, despite the heavy subsidies from the government. So I think people are realizing that this may not be the best way to go. But unfortunately, we're going to have a lot of tough times and more costly energy before we get back to sensible policy. Another one's meat consumption. I don't know if you know, but the World Health Organization earlier this year proposed a global ban on the consumption of meat and dairy products. And the World Health Organization didn't propose this ban on the basis of health. They proposed this to help the climate. And it wasn't a ban in 2050 or a ban in 2040. They said, we want to ban all meat and dairy next year.
Oh my gosh.
So I kind of wonder what world these people live in. Meat consumption has been rising in every nation in the world except possibly India over the last 60 years. Brazil, they're eating 4 times as much meat per person. In Japan, 5 times as much. And in China, 16 times as much meat per person as they did 60 years ago.
What do you think is really behind these individuals' intentions or agendas?
Well, I think we've been convinced by the ideology of climatism, the belief that humans are causing dangerous warming. But many groups have used the fear of man-made warming to build industries, wind, solar, and biofuels. The United Nations has wanted a world government for many years, has wanted, second, to redistribute wealth from the wealthy nations to the developing nations, and has also wanted to be an environmental leader. The theory of man-made warming has been great for all of those initiatives at the UN. And so, you know, we get all sorts of, and the environmental groups now, their basis has become man-made warming. It used to be, save the whales, and it used to be prevent nuclear proliferation, but they've all switched to global warming as the basis for their efforts.
Do you ever think there will come a day where the planet will collapse because of our emissions and human behavior that may accelerate climate change so as to make our world uninhabitable?
No, I don't think that's the case. Again, we've had only 1 degree Celsius of warming since 1880. You know, I had a few years ago, a couple students, young ladies from UCLA, called me up for a phone interview, so I started asking them questions. And I asked them, okay, how much do you think the planet has warmed in the last century? One said 5 degrees, another said 10 degrees. But it's about 2 degrees Fahrenheit. It's been very small. We've also had warmer periods in the past. There's a lot of data that shows we've had periods that were hundreds of years long, centuries long, when it was warmer than today. And that's most of the last 10,000 years. So we're not in abnormally warm periods. We need to reduce real pollution, of course. We need to reduce particulates, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide going into the air. We need to reduce, we need to get biodegradable plastics for plastics that's going into the oceans. But this idea that carbon dioxide is a pollutant, that's where we've really gone off base.
Mr. Goreham, thank you very much for coming on to Timeless today. And as a reminder, you can buy all 4 of Mr. Goreham's books. I'm sure you would love that. The 2 that I most recommend, and I think would be most helpful for understanding our moment now, are Green Breakdown, The Coming of Renewable Energy Failure, and The Mad, Mad World of Climatism, Mankind and Climate Change Mania. Oh, wait, hold on. Sean is cutting in saying there's a couple of questions from the chat.
Okay.
Don't you love that? I'm going, goodbye, but please stay, actually. Sean was just in my ear saying, look at the chat, which I should. The copper shortage issue, Sean, would you want to come on the air? And I don't see where that question is.
Oh, they're just asking about if Mr. Goreham would speak about the copper shortage issue.
Okay. Mr. Goreham, if you'd be willing to stay for a few more minutes, would you tell us about the copper shortage issue?
Certainly. Well, copper has become in very high demand for green products, of course. The electric vehicles use about 6 times the special metals of a gasoline vehicle, and one of those is copper, of course. We have a lot of groups building transmission out to remote sites for wind and solar, which need that sort of thing. So copper is in big demand. The problem is that it takes a long, long time to build copper mines. The International Energy Agency points out it takes about 16 years from first concept until you're actually producing copper. So this idea that this is another reason why a transition to wind, solar, and electric vehicles probably is not going to occur very fast because, for example, an electric vehicle, to produce a battery for an electric vehicle, a 1,000-pound battery, you have to move 500,000 pounds of earth. You have to do all this mining for copper and for lithium and for manganese and cobalt and a bunch of other things. So the copper prices are going to stay high for quite a while as people are trying to make this transition.
All right, and to appease the chat, another question regarding cryptocurrency. Is that sucking an enormous amount of energy from the grid?
Could you hear that, Mr. Goreham?
I did not.
There's a question about cryptocurrency sucking enormous amounts of energy from the grid.
Yes, I didn't mention that. Cryptocurrency is a big user of electricity. It's going to be smaller than the AI revolution, but it's not insignificant, and cryptocurrency is growing. And so this is another thing that is going to add to the demand and add to the the imbalance between the demand, which is going to be high, and the amount we can generate, which is lower. So cryptocurrency will be a factor, although smaller than the AI.
And then finally, does he see electric rates across the country rising, hitting highs like they have in California?
Do you see electric rates across the country hitting highs as they have in California?
I hope not. California's about
Sorry.
29 cents a kilowatt hour right now.
Oh, it's
The
crazy.
average in the country is about 15 cents a kilowatt hour. And it is going to go much, much higher in California. They're trying to put in a whole bunch of batteries and all sorts of other things, which are very expensive. But a lot of these data centers are being built in places like Indiana and Iowa right now, which have low electricity prices. We'll see if maybe they'll all leave California. They might, because who wants to pay twice as much for the power? It is a very big cost for a data center. But these prices are going to go up. And New England is another one where prices are really rising. So green policies are going to push these higher, and that's what's going to get people to push back.
It seems as though, with regard to many issues in this country, not just the climate one, that progressivism is so progressive that it's regressive.
Well, it is. If you look at these programs, I wrote an article about how this is the green energy movement is one of the biggest wealth transfers to the wealthy in history. We have subsidies for, if you put solar cells on your roof, you're subsidized in many states. They pay you high electricity credits to do that, and only the wealthy can do that. The average person owning a Tesla or an EV, usually it's a second car, and they have incomes much over $100,000 per year. So these things tend to be big wealth transfers from the middle class, and just in that regard, they certainly aren't something that's good for the poor.
How so very interesting that so many of our policies are packaged as helping the underdog, but then they end up functionally serving the rich. Funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, and especially when you get big government subsidies, and we have vast subsidies now coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act. The Cato Institute has forecasted $80 billion a year in fiscal year 2025. And we have whole industries that are growing up on these federal subsidies, carbon dioxide capture, carbon dioxide pipelines, a lot of these EV charging stations. None of them can make money. They're all relying on subsidies. So, when the government is shelling out big money, then the wealthy know how to get that, and the folks who are lower income levels don't really know how to do that.
Mr. Goreham, thank you so much for coming on to the show with maybe not the most encouraging information, but certainly some very helpful information. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Julie.
And I look forward to having you back on soon. And thanks so much to all of you in the chat for your robust questions. And I want to tell you about MyPillow before we have to bid you adieu. MyPillow right now is having a massive $25 extravaganza. That's right. It's exactly what it sounds like. Many of their products are just $25. 2-pack multi-use MyPillows, MyPillow sandals, 6-pack towel sets, brand new 4-pack dish towels, premium MyPillows with the all-new Giza fabric. Each of those products are $25. When MyPillow started, it was just a one-product company, but now it has all of these products in many different arenas, and they're having this $25 extravaganza sale. You can take advantage of it by going to mypillow.com and using the promo code Hartman, or calling 1-800-566-6745 today and using the promo code Hartman. Orders over $75 will receive free shipping too if you use the promo code Hartman, which, as we always say, is spelled with no E and one N. My gosh. Boy, sometimes on this show, the topics we're covering, it's really intense how much things are, sorry, I'm laughing preemptively at my joke, heating up in this country. Things are heating up and things are heating up. But you know what? We got to, as I always say, wise up to the realities that we're facing. And the green agenda is just one on the list. Yeah.
The climate's going to be here long after we wipe each other out. Humanity is the biggest problem.
That's right. And on that note, I bid you adieu. Thank you so much for joining us today. As always, you can email me at julie@julie-hartman.com. I love hearing from you. Love seeing the laugh emojis in the chat. That may go to Sean's head, but that's okay. He deserves it sometimes. Thanks again. Take care. I'll see you soon.